What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones, and coming up on today's episode, the Broncos return back to practice as they prepare for their season finale in Las Vegas. We'll hear today from head coach Sean Payton and quarterback Jarrett Stidham. All that and more coming up. The Denver Broncos were back on the practice field today as they prepare to face the Las Vegas Raiders for their season finale on Sunday. Both head coach Sean Payton and quarterback Jarrett Stidham spoke to the media today and discussed how important a win would be for this team on Sunday.
I think getting to 9 wins is important, and I think it's important for our players to understand that, and I think they do as well. Heading into next season, there's a ton of these peaks and valleys during any NFL season. I mean, when you look at a team like Philadelphia, it just comes with everyone. And certainly we had our fair share, but I think, finishing strong is important.
The goal this week is to win, get the 9th win for this team. And, it'll be the first winning season in however many seasons it's been. So it's a big deal. I mean, we're taking this week very seriously, obviously, and want to end the season the right way.
And head coach Sean Payton went on to talk about his expectations for Jarrett, this being his first start for the Broncos on the road.
Look, I think it'll be important. I mean, obviously he's familiar with this stadium we're going to. You go through the crowd noise. I would say today's the first day where we're in shotgun with him on a silent snap count. I mean, there are little nuances that obviously maybe are more cadence-driven. We'll work through that.
Plus, Jarrett Stidham went on to talk about what it will mean to return to Las Vegas.
Obviously excited. I spent a year there and made a lot of relationships with a lot of people. But I'm here now, so I'm looking forward to playing against those guys. I mean, I did it in practice, obviously, all last year. So just excited to get back in there on the opposing sideline and, try and score some points and hopefully win.
Looking at the matchup, both Sean Payton and Jarrett talked about the challenge that Raiders defensive end Max Crosby presents.
Max, I mean, the challenge with him is, I said this the other day, these traits where he's an exceptional athlete. He bends really well. So it's hard to stay on him. He can get off a block very quickly. He's highly intelligent. So you see him in a stance, waiting. He obviously understands where the backs are. So he's highly intelligent. And then the other thing is his stamina is unique. I mean, I don't have the exacts, but he's playing close to 98, 99%. And when you look at play 67, it's the same as play 8. That's rare. And then you have kind of one of these elite players. And you see it in every game. Run and pass. You see it in every game. So that creates, time relative to tonight will be third down. Obviously, that's a whole different, ball of wax in regards to protections and then, what you want to do. He plays over on the right, but he plays on the left. They move him around too. But he's something.
I can't speak highly enough of this guy. Being with him every day for a year, seeing how he works. The most impressive thing is I don't know if I've ever seen a player play that hard for that long every single time he's out on the field. So, I mean, he's going to bring it. We're going to have to be ready. He's one of the best in the league for a reason. So.
Sean also detailed the differences he's seen from this Raiders team since interim head coach Antonio Pierce took over.
I would say this, to his credit, he was a tough player. I remember him well. We had some good battles with the Giants teams. There's a grit and toughness you see with how they're playing, both on defense and certainly on offense, their running game. He obviously has a good, rich history with that tradition, and I think he's done a really good job. And that's a credit not only to him but his staff and his team. But you see it on film. You feel it. When we profiled this team, we profiled the entire season, but then more importantly, we profiled since he took over. The one thing that jumped out as you look at their takeaway and giveaway numbers, since he took over, they're fifth in the NFL with that turnover ratio, both offensively and combined. But he's done a really good job.
And now it's time to take a look at today's injury report. Tight end Chris Manhertz, tackle Mike McGlinchey, running back Samaje Perine, and safety Delarian Turner-Yell all did not participate in practice today. Plus outside linebacker Baron Browning, inside linebacker Josie Jewell, wide receiver Marvin Mims Jr., and wide receiver Cortland Sutton were all limited in practice. Now joining me here in the Broncos podcast studio for a more in-depth look at today's news is fellow team reporter Phil Milani. Phil, thanks for joining me.
Sid, Happy New Year.
Thanks
for having me.
Happy New Year to you. Last Wednesday of the season.
I know, crazy.
It's crazy how fast it flies by every single year.
Yeah. You wish the Broncos were still going to be playing, but overall, I think it's been a pretty good year, 8-8. Yep. And the goal, obviously, this week is to get to 9.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Phil, before we get into this final game of the season, I want to talk about the top news of the evening. It was just announced that this year for the Broncos, Pat Surtain, Justin Simmons, and Marvin Mims Jr., they will all be at the Pro Bowl this year. They're Pro Bowl starters this year.
No, very exciting for those guys, obviously. Big for Mims as a rookie to be able to make it to the Pro Bowl. Obviously, he's one of the top returners in the NFL. Had that little mishap the other week against the Patriots, but outside of that, he's been so solid receiving the ball. He obviously has that one touchdown return that he had against the Dolphins. So one of the top returners in the league. And then Simmons and Surtain, those are sort of household names at this point. And those guys tend to get these Pro Bowl nods. And Simmons, 3 interceptions this year, down from the last couple of years here. But still, he's that guy where opposing quarterbacks always know where he is. Such a smart player, that ball hawk back there where he's making an impact all the time. And then, PS2 is one of the best shutdown cornerbacks in the league. He takes away a half of the field almost every single week, and his stats this year go to show that too. People aren't testing him very much. So just a one interception, but I think that he plays a position where it's really hard to just look at the stats and say, well, he only has one interception. Well, that's not the impact he's having. He's still that guy who's taking away the top wideout every single week.
Yeah, back-to-back Pro Bowl seasons for Pat.
No,
2 in his only 3 years in the league.
Yeah, he's going to kind of get onto that Champ Bailey sort of routine here where every year, as long as he continues to maintain this level of play, he's going to be in the Pro Bowl. And, of course, he wants to start racking up those All-Pros too. Yeah, so those things are big things for these players. When at the end of your career, you go back and you look at these kind of numbers really are a big deal for these guys. So congrats to all 3 of them, and then a couple of alternates too. So that's very exciting for the Broncos.
Very, very exciting. Well, Phil, looking at the season finale, we opened the season versus the Raiders here at home. We're ending the season in Las Vegas versus the Raiders.
Bookends.
Yeah, bookends for sure. Jarrett Stidham, he's returning to Las Vegas, his former team there. Just what are your expectations for him in his second start here with the Broncos?
Oh, I'm sure that he's excited to go back, and he knows a lot of those guys, so just to be able to go back to Las Vegas, play a team you're very familiar with, I'm sure that he's eager to go and prove that he can be a starter in this league, I think that's just a natural emotion to be like, hey, I want to play, I want to be out on the field, I want to be leading my team. Nobody makes it this far hoping to just be the backup. So he said he's not going to approach it like an audition, but it sort of is like that, though, Sid. I think that if he goes out there and plays well and shows improvement from last week to this week, I think he's going to give Broncos coaches and the front office here something to think about for sure. He was a priority to go out and get him this last offseason. They brought him in. They liked what he did last year in his 2 starts with the Raiders, and they want to see if he can be the guy, and last week I think he did a pretty good job. He protected the football. He did his best to avoid big sacks. They didn't go 3 and out once for the first time this year, Sid. So I feel like he, for a first start, did pretty well. I know that they had the mishaps there with the cadence and the false starts near the goal line, but
that kind of takes
time. That's to be expected,
right.
I think. It's a new voice back there. So
for sure,
if they're able to clean some of those things up, if he's able to protect the football, that is such a big deal for Sean Payton. Just ball security, making sure that you're really careful with where you're putting the ball, how you're holding it in the pocket, all of these things. If he's able to do that again, I really think that the Broncos will think long and hard about him and his future here this offseason.
Yeah, definitely, Phil. I mean, you mentioned kind of the miscommunication there on offense, but in addition to that, what do you want to see Jarrett just improve upon in this final game?
Well, I think early in the game, some of the timing with some guys was a little bit off. Some of his balls were a little bit behind.
Right.
Like I know that Jerry Jeudy got hit pretty hard one time, and I think one was behind Brandon Johnson too. So timing with these guys, that should get better with more practice reps, more
for sure.
Chemistry there. I think that if he's able to just sort of connect on some of these plays down the field, and then obviously get the ball into the end zone, I think that you're talking about you can go from like scoring 16 points if you can get into that mid 20s. Upper 20s, you're going to be winning a lot of football games in this league. So this Raiders defense is really good.
Really good right now.
I know that you look at their record and you think that they had this sort of terrible season because they fired their coach and stuff.
Right.
Since they made the head coaching change, they're the number one defense in the NFL in terms of points scored, points allowed.
Right.
So this is a good defense. Max Crosby is insane. I mean, this guy's motor, he just never stops.
Yeah.
And so especially knowing Jarrett, I know that Max Crosby's going to be like, I want to get to him a couple of times. So if he's able to improve and score more points this week, going on the road, facing a tougher defense, that would really show a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, Phil, looking at this Raiders team, you mentioned interim head coach Antonio Pierce. What do you feel like's just changed from their attitude, their culture mindset over there?
Well, I think normally there's like a little bit of a ramp up, like a little boost, for an interim coach, but it's only like 1, maybe 2 games. They've really been able to sustain this thing playing for him. And Sean Payton talked about it today on Wednesday, just that they sort of taken on his personality, and he was a tough, hard-nosed type of player. He sees that in this Raiders team, and they've lost some close games. Obviously, that Vikings game 3-0, you just don't see scores like that very often, Sydney. So I think that they've really shown a toughness here. That this is going to be a hard game to go out to Las Vegas and get this win. And they were in a similar position last week to the Broncos, where if they would have beaten the Colts, and if Kansas City would have lost, then this would have been a huge game in terms of the division. So they're, I don't want to say they're in a similar spot as the Broncos, because they're just sort of way different situations, but just sort of the way that their record and the seasons all sort of come to an end here. This is going to be a really hard fought game, I think.
I think so too. And like you said, I mean, they're playing in this final game for interim head coach Antonio Pierce for that job there for him.
Yeah, and
so they got a lot to play for. Yeah,
I guess I sort of think about it like not their whole season, but like sort of this mini season for them.
Right.
He's 4-4. They want to send him off with a winning record and see if he's able to remove that interim tag. That's going to be interesting.
Absolutely.
Their interim GM, Champ Kelly, we know very well. He spent a long time here in Denver and got to know him over the years. So you kind of are like, hey, it's the Raiders, but when there's a guy like Champ Kelly there, you're also rooting for him to have a little bit of success. But still, it's the Raiders. You don't want to see them win. So I think for the Broncos, you kind of know that you're going to be facing a Raiders team. You lost 7 straight to them. You want to just end this season with a win, and beating the Raiders would be sort of a cherry on the top.
For sure. Yeah, Phil, I mean, it's like you said, there are kind of similarities here. They're hoping to get Antonio Pierce to 5-4, a winning record under him, and for the Broncos here, they're looking to get to 9-8, a winning season for the first time since 2016.
I think that's a big deal. You heard a lot of guys talking about that today. You just want to end the season with a little bit of momentum, even though it's not leading to the playoffs, but I still think if you have some positivity heading into the offseason, the next time you guys are together for the offseason program, I think that there's just a sense that, hey, we finished the season really strong. We went on that 5-game winning streak. We were able to win the final 2 games. You know, we turned the page. I think there's something to that.
Right. Something to build off of there.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas if you lose this one, you're still sort of like, meh, 8-9. 8-9 just sounds way different than 9-8.
It does. It really does. I don't know why either.
There's just such a different ring to it. So, and you don't want to look back and be like, oh, those 5 games, that was a fluke in the middle of the season. Yeah. I think that if you're able to win this one, you've really snapped a lot of streaks this year. You know, if you're able to beat the Raiders, you sort of got that monkey off your back, especially going on the road and facing the Raiders.
The Broncos have never won in Allegiant Stadium.
Exactly, yeah. You know, and even dating back to their time in Oakland, they've had a hard time of late on the road against the Raiders. So you beat the Chiefs this year. You won a road primetime game. A lot of these things that have been sort of storylines heading into these weeks, you're able to get those scratched off. Right. And so next year, when you're going on the road to face the Raiders, if you win this one, you don't have to talk about how there hasn't been that much success or the streak and that kind of thing. So just like how you don't have to talk about that with the Chiefs anymore. So there is a lot to play for in this one. And then, aside from the record and everything, there's guys on this team that are playing for their NFL futures. Yeah. So in addition to Jarrett Stidham, there's a lot of young guys on this team that are trying to make a statement, trying to make, you know, like little Jordan Humphrey, the touchdown he made last week against the Chargers, you're going to remember that play, you know, and it's impressive. He's playing for like, hey, I want to be a guy in this league where I'm getting a lot of snaps on offense and I'm not bouncing between the practice squad and the active roster. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of guys sort of in that boat that are saying, I got to prove myself here, and my career is sort of on the line here. There's a lot of guys playing for something meaningful here this week.
Absolutely, and you know, there's a lot of free agents too, so they're playing for tape for not only the Broncos, for the rest of the league too.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Well, Phil, it's been a pleasure all season long having you on Broncos Now every single Wednesday. Thank you very much. Wednesdays are the big day. They really are.
And so to be able to recap it with you, it's been special. So thank you.
No, thank you. And of course, you'll be on for this off season, but just not as much.
Just not recapping the big news every week. So.
Exactly. Well, always a pleasure, Phil. Appreciate you joining the show today.
Ed.
Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode. I will see you all then.